Happy Bicentennial!
Bully! Happy Bicentennial! All right, just now. Bully, thanks for being here today. Bully! Bully for Newfane and a Bicentennial!
The perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Original pioneer families continued to hold picnics for more than 70 years until the outbreak of World War II. On this very site, the Pioneers Association built a stage in the 1800s where prominent leaders would speak to the multitudes of picnic attendees that came from all parts of Western New York. Theodore Roosevelt, then governor of New York State, attended and spoke to the crowd from this stage in 1899. He would become the President of the United States just 2 years later. The International Railway Corporation, the IRC, purchased this property in 1900 and would build the Grand Olcott Beach Hotel and the trolley line from Lockport in 1900. The hotel would use this stage for 3 decades to entertain hotel guests and summer visitors to Olcott. They named this stage the Rustic Theater. Through the efforts of Pioneer Association leader Frederick Krull, the IRC sold this property to Niagara County in 1938 for the development of Krull Park. The hotel and trolley were removed, but a stage has always remained at this location, in recent years known as the Krull Park Bandstand. The county built the stage in the 1950s with the help of the Olcott Lions Club. Construction of this modern new stage was just completed after the previous stage was lost to the devastating flood in 2017. I would like to thank our town historian, Bill Clark, for compiling this history that we read today. Thank you, Bill. And at this time, we're going to have a little bit of introduction and some words by some of our state delegation before we then introduce our great Teddy Roosevelt. But at this time, I would like to call up our great senator, New York State Senate Minority Leader, Senator Rob Ortt, to offer
I guess if there's a hero or a American political figure that I always looked up to growing up, it was Colonel Theodore Roosevelt. And he was here, as a matter of fact, right here, and you're going to hear from him in a little while. So I got to make my speech both short and good and memorable. And I don't know if I'll be able to do that today, but that's right. That's right. You hear that? All short speeches are good speeches. That's a lesson in Albany we could learn from. But the colonel asked me when I saw him this morning, he said, "How are things in Albany?" And I said, "Well, they're probably about as bad, if not worse, from the time you remember them." And that might be true, but it's great to be here. You know, we took the carriage ride here, myself and Assemblyman Mike Norris and legislator Sean Fody, who I want to thank for his help. I certainly want to recognize Supervisor John Syracuse for all of his work, the historian, all the folks, all the volunteers who helped make this event a reality today. As we were taking the carriage ride, you know, I thought to myself how lucky I am to represent this community in this part of New York State. There are so many people from all different parts of the state, you know, whether it's New York City, Long Island, what have you, and I'm sure everyone thinks their part is special, but this truly is special when you think about this kind of public access to the water, this park. When you think of the history here in this community that Supervisor Syracuse talked about, and as I walk here today, you know, we could all be anywhere today, I thank God that we're here. So, you know, it's great to be here. It's great to represent you in Albany. It's great when I'm representing you in Albany, but when I'm not actually in Albany. I like to be here with all of you, and certainly happy to take part in this very special day and celebrate the bicentennial. And I certainly don't want to keep any more time between you and President Roosevelt. I think next up is the Assemblyman. If I may, I'm going to introduce I guess I can't say a colleague because you didn't serve with Assemblyman Roosevelt, but Mike Norris, like Colonel Roosevelt, serving in the New York State Assembly. He's your assembly member. He does a fantastic job, and I'm also very proud to call him a friend. He's a real partner in the work that we do, and he's a partner in the fight that we fight every day in our state's capital on behalf of all of you. So at this time, I want to call up my friend and your Assemblyman, Mike Norris.
Because at the end of session, everything gets rammed through the very last minutes of session. Thousands of bills, hundreds of bills. And back in the 1880s, it was the same exact thing that's happening today, Mr. President. So I do want to just say, when you think about President Roosevelt, he is one of the giants who have led our nation and our state. And when you look at public service, you epitome what public service was all about. You challenged the status quo. You made sure that when we were going westward, that we preserved our environment, that we protected it. And what better place to recognize your leadership for our nation and state than right here along the shore of Lake Ontario. Thank you, Mr. President. And as I look out during my time as a New York State Assembly member, which I'm so privileged to be in the same small category as you in your early days, I look at the break wall right out here, where a few years ago, we had to epitomize and work hard through our public service to deliver that here for the town of Newfane, which will last for generations to come. And I was just very pleased to work at the time with the governor, with the supervisor, with our county legislator and the senator to achieve this. And to know that in time, this shore and this harbor is going to be protected because of the efforts that we did in today's 2017, 2019. We rose to the occasion to protect the Olcott Harbor here. So with that, I want to just thank you, Mr. President, for coming back. And I know you'll be sharing some great words with us. And I want to just thank all of you for being here today. And I want to thank particularly our town supervisor, John Syracuse, for his leadership as well, and present him a citation from the New York State Assembly commemorating your visit back in 1899 and your return here in 2024. Thank you, Mr. President, for being here. Congratulations.
Thank you to OBCA, Olcott Beach Community Association, for their continuous and countless efforts to host these events all throughout the summer in Olcott, to make this place beautiful again, and their continued partnership on bringing events and attractions and tourism and community events for all ages back to our beautiful little town. Thank you to the town board, the town supervisor. We've been all hands on deck, working together just every week, talking to each other, making sure that everything is set, and even to the last minute of John texting me, "Are you on the carriage yet? Are you going to? Where is it?" We're just always communicating and always working together. Thank you to the staff of the town hall, Clerk Donna Lakes and Mickey Cramp, for all your years of efforts. Everybody, this is a team effort. As my little boy Andrew over there would say, teamwork makes the dream work. And the other one's still learning that as he flops around on the ground. But thank you to our state representatives for their continuous efforts. Every time we reach out to them for help in this area, they're always answering the phone. And I have to give a special shout out to the county parks. Jeff Gaston, director of parks, has been here every day. I have been hounding him. We had our meeting Monday, and he's been making the rounds, and the entire staff. It's not easy maintaining and hosting, maintaining this park and hosting these events, which seems like every weekend this place is always full and something going on. So,
ladies and gentlemen, I am Theodore Roosevelt, and I am delighted to be back in Olcott, New York. I say bully and happy bicentennial, Newfane. I was last here in 1899. I would like to state for the record, I like what you've done with the place. It's a delight to be back in the Empire State. I'm in a region where throughout the morning I've been remembered and recognized and thanked for my public service. Your good citizens have said, "Good morning, Teddy." Or "Hello, Colonel Roosevelt," as indeed I wish to be called by my friends, and I consider each and every one of you my friends. Even that young man who this morning in the park, when I was making my way through on a little stroll, enjoying the birds, he pointed at me and told his friends, he said, "Look, there's the Monopoly dude." Quite humbling for an old politician, I assure you. If he knew his history half as well as you, he would have known I was the anti-Monopoly dude. And today we were met by the wonderful sounds of the trumpet player here on the hillside. He was here just a moment ago. Might we thank everyone who's brought music to life right down here. Would you stand and just give a wave, be acknowledged for bringing your wonderful Hail to the Chief, which, of course, be it known, it's really a Scottish drinking song, perhaps appropriate under some presidential administrations. That might be the closest I come to making any remarks touching upon the times in which we are now, politically, the challenges that we have. But I'll just simply state this. Each and every one of us is called to rise to the highest acts in the highest office in the land, that of citizen. My hero, Abraham Lincoln, reminded us at Gettysburg that our great experiment is a government of, by, and for the people. That's each and every one of you. So I wish you in the weeks and months ahead to act with honesty, common sense, and integrity. Participate in this great experiment, and do so in a way that lives up to the great commandment to love thy neighbor as thyself. Not thy Republican neighbor, not thy Democratic neighbor, not the neighbor that speaks the same as you do or has the same yard sign. We are all Americans, united beneath one flag, neither red nor blue, but red, white, and blue. And the future of this country depends upon each and every one of us taking up the responsibilities of citizenship in such a way that brings honor to our family, to our community, and to the Republic. A couple of things in history that you might appreciate today. The first is how I came to the presidency, a story that, of course, involves Western New York. The year was 1901. I had previously, as is testified to the commemoration of my visit here in 1899, I served 1 2-year term as the governor of New York. I fought for the square deal. I fought against the special interests on Wall Street. I fought for good government for all of the people of the Empire State. When the election year 1900 rolled around, the Republican bosses, led by United States Senator Thomas Collier Platt of Wiegand, New York, they decided that they would like to send me away. You've heard of the New England mother. She had 2 sons. One became a ship's captain off to sea. The other became Vice President of the United States, and neither was ever heard from again. In late 1899, Vice President Garrett Hobart of New Jersey died in office. Then, constitutionally, the office would be left vacant until subsequent to the following election. In 1900, the Republican convention met in Philadelphia, and Senator Platt and others saw to it that I was nominated to join President McKinley's re-election ticket as his vice presidential nominee. At the convention, it was unanimous, every vote but one, my own. I said I would rather be a history professor than be vice president. But once nominated, felt it my duty to serve, told the Republicans to use me to the hilt. I campaigned 16,000 miles by train in the western states as the Democracy had nominated William Jennings Bryan, the boy orator of Nebraska, to head their ticket, when word came that McKinley had been shot. By steamboat, I went to Burlington, and by rain from Burlington to Buffalo. The president's physicians assured me and the assembled cabinet members that he would recuperate from his wounds. It was thought that it would do Wall Street's anxiety and the nation's anxiety some good if I was seen to go on a planned vacation with my family awaiting me in the Adirondacks, Santanoni, Dr. Prine's camp, nearby modern-day Newcomb Township in New York. I went thither. I remember it well. Ted Jr. shot his first buck. I did no hunting. I climbed Mount Marcy, the highest point in the Empire State, and the cloud splitter lived up to its nickname. When reaching the apex, all of the clouds dissipated, and for 360 degrees around, the fresh waters and the high peaks of the Adirondacks celebrated the morning. My little children, the bunnies, played in the headwaters of the Hudson River. A hunting guide known to me was seen coming through the woods when we were having lunch at Lake Tier of the Clouds. I knew it to be bad news in Buffalo. I was needed there. The president was thought to be dying. Unfortunately for President McKinley, the two physicians treating his wounds were both obstetricians, neither of whom had ever treated a gunshot wound in his practice. When I reached North Creek Depot, further down on the Hudson, a telegram waiting for me there that morning of September 14th. The president had died at 2 o'clock that morning while I was en route. I was now your president, going by train to Buffalo to pay condolences to Mrs. McKinley, and then in a private residence, the Wilcox Mansion. Some of you have visited on Delaware Avenue, that private residence, now the only National Park Service site in western New York. I took the oath of office in a borrowed suit of clothes, without a Bible at hand, simply stating beforehand that it would be my aim that the policies of the McKinley administration for the peace, prosperity, and honor of the American people would remain entirely unbroken. I do hope that there's something of my 7½ years that you might still appreciate. The parks and the forests, the wildlife refuges, they are probably the most popular of my legacy. Yellowstone. You knew that even before you were watching the TV program. There were 5 national parks when I became your president. I doubled the number to 10. And, of course, it took an act of Congress to name a national park. On this issue of the conservation of our natural resources, I was a progressive. And I discovered that all too often the opposite of progress was Congress. But I was able to wrestle parks and forests from Congress, but I thought the most important work I did was a bit of what the modern public servants call infrastructure. On my part, a bit of ditch digging in the Isthmus of Central America. The Panama Canal had been a vision of mankind since the explorations of Balboa 4 centuries prior. Completed in 1914, it cut to 1/3 the amount of time necessary to move our great naval assets from one ocean to the other. Not unrelated to it, the steaming around the world of the Great White Fleet. 16 battleships painted white, the color of peace, and in circumnavigating the globe, accomplishing what no Spanish, English, or Dutch armada had ever accomplished before. I was a Navy man. My birthday is Navy Day. And I'm sure, in part with the help of your historian, Mr. Clark, and others, you might be able to enjoy the first of 30 books I wrote, A Naval History of the War of 1812, where America's greatest success was here on the lakes. I think I'm actually best remembered not for the legacy of success, but for the legacy of a failure. A failed bear hunt in the Delta of Mississippi in 1902, when I refused to shoot an adult male bear that had been wounded and tied to a tree. The story, rather than being forgotten, spread by newspaper and telegram. When I returned to the White House, I received a letter there from the Mictum family, small candy makers, toy manufacturers in Brooklyn, New York. Mrs. Mictum, in her letter to me, asking permission to make a stuffed bear and to name it after me. I wrote back, I said, you may go ahead and do so, but I don't think it will help your sales very much at all. Apparently, the sales of what they called Teddy's bear, with the apostrophe possessive S, were pretty good because the Mictums became the world-famous Ideal Toy Company of New York City, of Niagara Falls, eventually strengthening Niagara Falls State Park. During my gubernatorial administration, we created the first interstate park, the Palisades, that joined the Hudson River between New Jersey and New York. we strengthened the administration of the great Adirondack State Park. Being outdoors, being in nature, whether it was indeed 1877, the year that the first fair was held here by your Niagara County Pioneers Association. I was a sophomore at Harvard. I did not learn much of practical value at Harvard, but it was during my time there that my young father, Theodore Roosevelt, a man for whom I'm named and the greatest man I ever knew, he died my sophomore year at Harvard. I sought healing in the north woods of Maine and the great Rustic country. As a young man, my asthma was often cured by trips in northern New Jersey, in the hill country, or out along the Hudson River, or out in beloved Oyster Bay, Long Island. And after the death of my wife and mother, when I was a young assemblyman, the word coming to me by telegram on the floor in Albany that my wife and mother were both dying in New York City. It was St. Valentine's Day. I was 25 years old. There's nothing in my diary that day but a large black X. I sought my healing on a cattle ranch along the Little Missouri River in Dakota Territory. I come to you today from Medora, North Dakota, gateway to Theodore Roosevelt National Park and future home of Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, to which I all beckon you to please come and visit. But here, in this park, in this beautiful lake, in the parks of Niagara County, and in the state parks of western New York, you have nature. And it beckons to each and every one of you, especially with families and young children. There's entirely too much time spent on electronic devices. Too much time in arguments on social media, perpetual arguments never to be won by one side or the other. Where do we meet one another? There's nothing like rowing a boat out on the lake, something I did often on Long Island Sound, and I'm a better man for it. To each and every one of us is made the call to civic responsibility. The men here, and the women in the audience especially, goes the credit. The Women's Club and the Garden Club was just as important as any political organization in my day. And it's to the women and the mothers that great, great thanks must be given. You are indeed doing the work of the Republic in raising your children in the right way. Hear, hear, to the mothers. And out here in the sunshine, you'll understand why they wear bonnets. Take you back to October 14th, 1912 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For recent news has meant that all of a sudden I'd become a meme from those days. I was by then the Bull Moose Progressive Party candidate for the presidency. I'd won 8 of the 12 Republican contests held that spring, running against my old friend and hand-chosen successor, William Howard Taft, who had returned my Republican Party and our federal government back over to the control of those men that I called the malefactors of great wealth and the land robbers. Senator Bob LaFollette, Fighting Bob of Wisconsin, won 2 of the other primaries. Taft was not popular with the grassroots of Lincoln's Republican Party, the shopkeeper, the mechanic, the farmer. But at the Republican convention in Chicago, the nomination was stolen for Taft. By the way, not the first nor the last time that something politically was stolen in Chicago. Roosevelt delegates marched out of that convention shouting, "Thou shalt not steal! Thou shalt not steal!" My nomination in Chicago was seconded by Jane Addams, the great social reformer of Chicago's whole house, for women's suffrage was a part of our progressive platform, unlike the 2 major parties. Onward Christian Soldier was our theme song. Some say the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule our platform. I said we stand at Armageddon and we battle for the Lord. Leaving the Hotel Gilpatrick that morning in Milwaukee, I ascended an open-air automobile, destined for the auditorium where thousands of good citizens awaited my remarks. I turned and waved to the crowd outside the hotel. When I did so, a madman reached in that automobile and shot me at close range with a .38 caliber. The bullet pierced my overcoat, my folded speech, my steel eyeglass case, lodged deep in my chest, cracked a rib, knocked me down in the automobile. I first stood and made sure that no vigilante justice was done to the madman that shot me. But then, being a hunter and a former soldier, I knew to spit into my palm and to check my spittle. There was no blood in my spittle. My lung was not punctured. It was but a mere flesh wound. I refused medical attention. I demanded to go and make my speech to the thousands waiting. The automobile took me thither. I climbed upon the stage. I pulled my jacket to the side. I showed the audience my bloody blouse. I said, you must bear with me. You may not understand. I've just been shot. But it takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. I spoke for 80 minutes with a bullet in my chest. And right now, Supervisor Syracuse is wondering what it will take to get me to stop hollering at you here in Krull Park. There's a great deal to be enjoyed and celebrated today, most especially our commonality in being Americans, and for many of you, the wonderful joy of being a New Yorker. In Paris in 1910, I made a speech at the Sorbonne, the University of Paris. Now the eyes of the world are upon Paris as we gather for the Olympics. I made some remarks there, a speech called Citizenship in a Republic. By this time in 1910, I was a mere citizen of the world's oldest republic, speaking to a creme de la creme audience of the world's second oldest republic. Some of the remarks that I made that day remain famous to this day. The flag bearer for the United States Olympic team, Mr. LeBron James, I'm told that he writes these words on his sneakers. That Tom Brady used these words in the locker room to motivate the Patriots and the Buccaneers. That indeed Miley Cyrus has some of these words tattooed someplace. I share these words hopefully to give you a little inspiration for the weeks and months ahead as good citizens. You're doing good deeds in your home communities and here. Good deeds for conservation like the parks, good deeds for the waterfront, good deeds for your organizations like Lions and Kiwanis and Rotary and more. Well, this is America, where no good deed goes unpunished. Certainly no good deed goes without its second guessing, its Monday morning quarterbacking, its criticism. Persist in your good deeds. The Republic needs them now more than ever. And when criticized, remember, it is not the critic who counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds might have done them better. The credit belongs to the man and today to the woman who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short to gain it again, but who spends himself in the great devotions, the great enthusiasms, and who may err, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who in the end, if he knows the triumph of high achievement, then he dares greatly, that his name shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Good citizens, we've all known victory, we've all known defeat. When I was a young man, I ran for the mayorship of New York. I came in third out of 3. That's last place. What if I had given up on politics and public service at such a young age? I would have never been your president, fighting as your legislators and assemblymen and senators and councilmen here are fighting for the square deal. The reason, by the way, that I'm atop Mount Rushmore. Have you seen me there? Rather stone-faced there, aren't I? Well, I come to life in North Dakota, and what an honor and a pleasure to come to life here, 125 years after having done so in August of 1899 as your governor, 200 years after the establishment of the township of Newfane. What a beautiful day it is on Lake Ontario, and how blessed we all are to be here and to be citizens of the greatest republic the world has ever known. God bless and Godspeed the people of Newfane, New York. Thank you kindly. Bully. Bully.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. And as a small token of our great appreciation for that inspirational speech and your visit here to our lovely town of Newfane, I wanted to present you with our bicentennial coin on behalf of the town of Newfane. And we hope that you remember us well. And we appreciate what you've done. And I know that you'll be milling about here in the community over the next few hours, and we greatly appreciate that.